I'm a believer that you bring the investor on the journey with you. So as soon as you have an idea, you go out and start telling them, I have this idea. And then as it unfolds, you go back to them. I had an entrepreneur come to me once saying, I'm not raising money now, but in 6 months I will be. May I keep you informed of our progress? Which I thought was a good way to do it because there's no pressure. They're not raising money now. There's no ask on the investor. So in most cases, the investors are, their guard is down and they're going to be listening because they're kind of curious as to how this is going to work out.
On this episode of Establishing Your Empire, I host Hall T. Martin. Hall launched 10 Capital as the Texas Entrepreneur Networks in 2009. Today, the firm has over 14,000 investors in its network and has helped startups raise over $900 million. He also previously led the Central Texas Angel Network, or CTAN, where he achieved an over a 40x return for the investors. He's the founder of the Texas Open Angel Network, which is a nonprofit dedicated to the education of angel investors. And as a part of that program, he hosts the Investor Connect podcast series. A must listen is the Startup Funding Espresso, where you can learn about raising funding for your startup and the time it takes to have an espresso. You're listening to the Establishing Your Empire show, a podcast that inspires entrepreneurs, creatives, and future business owners to pursue their passions, grow their organizations, and build their empire. My name is Daran Herrman, and creatively, I'm best known for my photography. But business-wise, my claim to fame is growing a company from $15K per month in online sales to breaking the $1 million a month barrier. And I'm sitting down with interesting people to talk about their process, the lessons they've learned, and how they have established their empires. All right, I got Hall T. Martin here on the Establishing Your Empire podcast. Thank you so much for joining me this morning and being on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
This is going to be a lot of fun because you have all this experience in the startup funding, investing, podcasting, blogging, and I'm sure a host of other things. When somebody says, who is Hall T. Martin? Like, what's your elevator pitch, or what do you usually say?
I'm basically a connector. I like to connect people together, have always been doing that. I've always been intrigued by early stage businesses, not the later stage. I've worked on both sides, and the early stage is the fun part for me. And then I like innovation and entrepreneurship. I try to foster that, and because I believe that's the answer to most problems is we need to innovate and need to be entrepreneurial. And so wherever I see that, I always try to foster that to make that go forward.
How did you even get into the venture capitalist, the investing world?
I came to Austin back in 1986. We had 500,000 people back then. And I went to work for a company that about 9 years later went IPO. And so I was an early employee. So I started doing angel investing. And we had an angel group in Austin back then called Capital Network. They ran from 95 to about 2002 and joined, made one investment, lost all my money, started to realize this is harder than it looks. And then when they were tied to the dot-com world, and when that went away, they went away with it too. And so we didn't have an angel group for several years. 2006, the city did a restart. They called it the Central Texas Angel Network. And I was the first member to sign up because I saw the challenge in angel investing. You have to spend all day finding the deal, and then you spend all night doing diligence on it. And you really need to band together to share that diligence in that workload because it was pretty manual back then. Online tools now make it a lot easier, but back then it was pretty paper based. And so I joined the group as a member. And when you're the first one on, you're automatically on the board in charge of membership. And so I was out recruiting other members, and I got about 50 members recruited. And then we lost our director. So I became the director, and I led it for the first 2 years. And we ended up with about 5 million invested in 20 deals, and we got about a 40x return out of that over the next 7 years. So that really propelled the group forward, having great returns from those first 2 years. And then my undergraduate alma mater, Baylor, came to me and said, "Well, we need help putting an angel group together." So I helped put that one together, and that's where I really saw that the why of the group, why are we here, really makes a big difference on the outcome. With the first one, we had turnover about 30% membership every year because it was more financial. We're here to make investments and see what we get. With Baylor is about the student experience and job placement and giving back to the university. So the 30% turnover was about over 7 years, not over 1 year. So it makes a big difference as to why you're getting people together for it. So I ran those two angel groups and then started a third one called the Wilco Angel Network. In 2009, decided the big company I worked for was too big, and so I stepped out and retired and started my second career. I started the company under the name Texas Entrepreneurs Network, and we were helping startups raise funding from angels because we saw the challenge they had. They didn't have their documents together, didn't know how to pitch, and nobody followed up. And so we were going back, showing them you got to do more than just pitch. You have to go back and show the growth story, build a relationship, and close. And it's going to take several touches, not just one. And so that's what we did. We did funding forums around the state. We did big events in Austin around tech and healthcare and consumer product goods. And in 2017, we were starting getting calls for access to our investor pool from outside the state. And so we changed the name from Texas Entrepreneurs Network to 10 Capital. That's what 10 stands for, and started working around the country. And now we have over 15,000 investors in the network, and we've raised almost $1 billion for companies that have gone through our programs because we've been doing it for 12 years. Mostly seed, Series A, Series B, venture deals is what we're working on, and have just kept growing our network of angels and venture capitalists and family offices. And now we're moving a little bit into crowdfunding because you can raise up to 5 million, and this is becoming a viable way for anybody to raise funding as well. It's not just consumer products; it's anything. So we're seeing that as a big path forward as well. So that's how we got to where we are today.
That's amazing. And almost $1 billion. That just it's such a big number. Do you know how many, and it's okay if you can't answer, but how many deals does it take to even get to a number like that?
Several
Yeah.
thousand.
So I was
Because at the
thinking.
seed, they're raising 250, 500. Series A are raising 1.5 to 5 now, and then Series B is 5 to 15 million. And if you add unicorns, you can put zeros on all of those numbers to, take it to the next level. And then we're now looking at the blockchain world and seeing the new possibilities there. It's still a little bit early. 2017, 18, we did a little bit with the ICO white paper madness that was that, but we stepped away from it because most of our investors were stepping back from that. Well, here today, investors are now stepping back into it. They are investing, they are engaging with it. So there are now real networks and real businesses going on, and still early days, but it's starting to get some traction with the investors. So we'll be engaging with that here soon, also.
And I want to get deeper into the kind of this startup funding world, but I want to go back a little bit because you've been a blogger for like over 20 years. You got a podcast. Maybe talk to me about how you got into blogging, where it's taking you, anywhere you want to go with it, because I think it's an exciting spot where a lot of people want to be content creators, but they don't really do a whole lot. And to me, I've seen such, I mean, even just being able to have this conversation with you with the podcast, it's such a great way to connect with people. But maybe give us a little bit of overview of your experience with blogging and such.
Sure, I've always liked writing, and even at the previous company I was at, I helped start blogs because I saw that was the next way forward, where everybody could have their own soapbox to stand up on. And I blogged on emerging technologies because I thought that was a key part of my job at that time, was to keep track of all the things going on. And then when I started with Texas Entrepreneurs Network, we started blogging about the local entrepreneur ecosystem. And so one of the things I did was I put a resource list together. So oftentimes I get calls from or visits from people that are trying to build out their entrepreneur ecosystem. And my coaching is we'll go catalog all the resources in the area that you're serving and make that available to all the entrepreneurs, because it's hard to find if you don't know where to go look. And it's sometimes surprising what you have. And then where you see gaps in it, that's what you work on building out. You try to recruit those or fill those gaps if you need to as well. And so I got into it because I was trying to foster the local entrepreneur ecosystem, and then started writing blog posts about how do you raise funding, how do you pitch, how do you invest, and so forth. And got about two or 300 blog posts out of it in the time I did that. And then when we went to 10 Capital, we kind of did a restart. And we started a thing called the Startup Funding Espresso, which in the time it takes to have an espresso, you can actually learn something about startup funding and raising. And we've done over 500 of those already. And then we convert that content into e-guides. So anybody that's doing blogging, my coaching is always think not just about the blog post, but think about the end game. How do you repurpose and reuse it? There's 30 plus ways you can reconfigure content. And so you want to set it up in a way that you can rerun it and rewrite it for different formats, podcasts, YouTube, blog sites, etc., and social media, as well as being able to turn it into e-guides and long form content and presentations. So we've got a system set up for that we run now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a content generating machine. And I think the Startup Funding Espresso is really this fun and quick ways to learn about startups and other things, because sometimes it could be a lot to take in. And the ones that I've seen, at least, you cover kind of one subject, and it's this kind of a bite size to where it's very easy to consume. So I highly recommend checking it out, by the way. What about somebody who wants to get into, let's say actually the startup side? What advice would you give somebody? Maybe, it doesn't have to be in Austin. Maybe Austin would be the easiest place to take it. But what advice would you give them if they want to just kind of get into the startup world?
So what you can do is just start going to the local pitch sessions and the local incubator and start hanging out with the startup people and seeing what they're focused on, who's doing what, get a little bit of a set there. Doesn't mean you have to limit yourself, but if you want to go out and talk to people about what their challenge is and what they're doing and how they're doing it, you start to get the flavor of what the local startup ecosystem is that you're in as well. And you don't have to limit yourself. If you find another one around the country, you can actually move to another city and participate in a startup ecosystem that may be more your style or more in the area that you're interested in. I always coach startup ecosystem developers, build your startup ecosystem on successful serial entrepreneurs. I've sat through many a chamber and other government group that wants to support their ecosystem, and they brainstorm up all kinds of ideas that they have no resources for. And it used to be everybody wanted to be Silicon Valley. Well, Silicon Valley had a certain set of characteristics and funding and talent that gave it the startups that it has. And I can almost guarantee you, if you're not in that area, you will not have the same resources. You will have a different set of resources, and you should really think about that. I was talking to people in Nebraska once, and I said, "Well, who are the successful serial entrepreneurs?" And the answer came back: people that work on back office software for insurance companies. Oh, okay, I would not have guessed that. Well, that's what you should build it around. Go find those people that are doing that. They've proven it works. They've got the star power, and you can build your ecosystem as from there outwards. You can do more things, but start with that and grow it forward, because you have a track record there of success and everybody knows it. And instead of trying to come up with something brand new nobody's ever heard of before, because you're going to have a challenge trying to recruit the talent for that.
And you mentioned the word incubator, and maybe give us kind of an overview of what an incubator is versus accelerator, because I think a lot of people get confused in these different areas.
Sure. The incubator was what, when I was in Austin starting the Texas Entrepreneurs Network, we had three incubators in town, one at a university and one that was city led, and then one that was privately led. And so it was basically a place where you actually officed and you would go through classes on site. I actually helped start one in the consumer product goods space. It was really originally called Incubation Station, now called SKU, and it was Consumer Product Goods Accelerator. And when we ran it, we actually met at the basement of a bar in several years to have the cohorts come through, and the mentors came out and gave presentations and coaching, and the startups did practice pitches, et cetera, and shared results with each other. And so it's more of a physical getting together on a regular basis. And the goal was to take them from startup into the market. And accelerator is more along the lines of, we're just going to give you some coaching and advice and support, but we're really not going to try to incubate you all the way through. There's always different theories around successful startups, how much need incubation versus how much just need acceleration. And of course, the acceleration is a lot lower cost. Incubation can be very expensive. I think at one point it was $400,000 a year to keep the lights on for an incubator. And anybody that works in a government funded thing knows you can get money the first year, but will you get it the second, third, or fourth is another matter. And so you want to set yourself up so that your program sustains, and lower cost always sustains longer than higher cost.
So what about somebody who's got like, and I always have a lot of people that I chat with that have like ideas, and they want to like create a startup. They want to start going. What advice would you give them to get started? Like what would be one of the first things to go do?
So always go talk to the customer. and try to figure out what they need and so forth. And if you're thinking you're going to raise funding, then start bringing that dialogue to the investor. Most starts when they go to the investor, they're talking about the product that they're building, and oh yeah, somebody has a problem, but here's the product. Let me focus on that. But what investors really want to hear is that we're tied to the market. We have market reality that's guiding us, and so you always want to talk about a customer. And so go talk to customers or potential customers of it and start to get what is their care about, what do they think about it, what about the price, and you start to get feedback as to what's going to work and what's not going to work more quickly. And investors will appreciate that and be much more likely to support it because you're tied to someone that could potentially pay money for your solution versus I built a product and now I got to go find somebody that's going to pay me money, which can be a very long path forward in some cases.
And do you think it's ever like too early to start talking to investors? Let's say, should you have some milestones hit, a company created, or should, somebody start talking to them when they're just working through the idea and talking to the customers, like you were saying?
Yeah, no, I'm a believer that you bring the investor on the journey with you. So as soon as you have an idea, you can go out and start telling them, I have this idea. And then as it unfolds, you go back to them. I had an entrepreneur come to me once saying, I'm not raising money now, but in 6 months I will be. May I keep you informed of our progress? And every month he dropped me an email or a call and told me how they were doing on the progress of it. And I was learning a little bit more about the problem they were solving, the solution they came up with, and the team. And so when it came time to raise funding, he had a group of people that were up the curve on what they're doing, which I thought was a good way to do it because there's no pressure. They're not raising money now. There's no ask on the investor. So in most cases, the investors are their guard is down and they're going to be listening because they're kind of curious as to how this is going to work out. Versus I'm raising money and I want you to pay money today. Well, this is okay. Now you have to do diligence. Now it's work, and now we have to get into it. And so that's at a different level for sure.
And I think that's kind of been a common answer to a question somewhat similar to that is just communicate with some people, develop a network. I've even had Sean Flynn, who connected us, said develop like almost a newsletter out to your investors that you're chatting with just to kind of keep them updated, which I thought was a great idea. We've moved down this path, which is kind of just fun to do. Forgive me if this is wrong, but I read that you have 9,000 pitches that you or your team has heard. So, what is some advice for the pitches to develop your pitch, to get a better pitch, anywhere where you want to take it?
A big mistake most startups make with their pitch is that they focus on the product. They treat the investor like a customer and they want to basically sell the product to the investor. And that's about one fifth of what the investor needs to know. So you start with the problem you're solving, solution you offer, and then the product you have. And then you get into the other details around the market size and the team and the financials and the go to market. And you highlight that you're highlighting validation points. We have these things figured out and the risks are off the table. This is going to work. And if you have people that are ready to pay money for it, that's what investors really look for is market validation and product validation. Product works and people will pay for it. So that's what the pitch has to convey is we've got that figured out. So make it a more broad and encompassing presentation on all the key elements, not just the product itself.
And you just mentioned what you have to have. What gets you excited when you hear something like that? What gets you excited as an investor? Like when you hear it, you're like, oh man, I'm ready to move ahead with this.
Customers are signing up to actually use the product and we're getting good engagement with it and so forth. Again, it's you want to talk to the customer early on, even when you're thinking about the product, because the feedback is going to help guide the decision. So customers in the process helping guide this, and if they signed up for a pilot or try and buy or something, then they're engaged in a good way. That means there's real interest here. So you're looking for the customer interaction and engagement in most cases.
And then what about how to value a startup or to fund a company? Like that always seems like an interesting equation, right?
Well, I always tell people it's really less of a formula, more of a negotiation. And so you need to approach it mentally as a negotiation. No matter what number the startup puts out there, the investor will push back on it. And so just be ready for that. And so the key to a good negotiation is to articulate all the values that are in the business today. And that's the team, the product, the the intellectual property, and the sales. And so what you want to do is highlight where you are with all of those things and call it out specifically and put a number on it, add up the numbers, and that's how you get to your valuation. So you're identifying what's in the business today. So some mistakes people make is they want tomorrow's valuation today. One day I'll be worth $15 million, therefore my valuation is worth 20 today. Well, no, if today is $2 million, your valuation is going to be about that. If tomorrow is worth around 15 million, well then it will be about that tomorrow. So it's today's valuation for today, and don't get ahead of yourself. Some people want to put real high rich valuations on their deal, and I always coach them. It's not that you can raise the money and on that valuation today. Is will you be able to, if you do so, will you be able to raise the next round at the next valuation? Valuations need to typically double at least when they go from one round to the next. And so if you want to put a $10 million valuation on it, okay, in 3 years, you're going to be needing to do a $20 million valuation round, and the revenue will have to be at X. Will you be able to get to X for that in order to achieve that? And if the answer is, I don't think so, well, then your current valuation is too high. So you test the valuation by putting it in the broader context of their overall fundraise, because entrepreneurs can get ahead of themselves pretty quick. I just don't want to give up the equity, but the reality is you're going to have to raise money several times to get there, and you have to think about that.
And you mentioned earlier, like how different cities or areas have kind of different niches in the startup world. What about Austin? Like, what are you seeing around here or in Texas? What's some niches you're seeing or some trends or whatever?
Well, consumer product goods was a surprising one. When I ran my first angel group, everybody walking in the door as an investor said they were a tech investor. But when I rolled it up at the end of the year, half the investments were in consumer product goods. And so, well, we were really thinking a different thing there when we really get down to it. Tech can be hard to invest in at the early stage. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and what's really done and how long will it really take. It can be hard. If you have a consumer product good, you can taste and touch and see. Some investors can find more confidence in that. And there's a change in the brands. The millennials and the Gen Zs, they want their own brands. They don't want the boomer brands. So there's a big seismic shift in the quality of the food and just the brands in general. Yeah, I know it's a good brand, but I want my own. So there's that aspect going on where there's a lot of change going on in the space. And then, Austin's had a history of enterprise software, and the next generation of that is going to be blockchain. And so we're seeing a lot of activity around blockchain. There's crypto miners, there's people developing enterprise solutions with blockchain enabling it. Of course, in 2017, we had a lot of insanity around ICOs and white papers and what could be there, but that was just the infrastructure wasn't in place for most of that anyway. So it takes time to build out the infrastructure, and then there's regulatory that goes around it as well. So that's going to take time as well to figure out. But anything truly worth having is probably worth waiting for.
And you mentioned blockchain. I think so many people like want to get into this space, but don't know how. Let's say you're not a programmer, because I think programmers can kind of figure that out, the direction to blockchain. You're not a programmer. How could somebody get into this world, get ahead, or at least feel like they're going to be comfortable in this blockchain Web 3.0 world, right?
So you go back to looking for real businesses. They've got a product, is shipping, and somebody's paying for it. Those you consider. 95% of them are not going to be that. They're going to be futures and ideas and great things someday. And so you avoid those. Go find the real ones. And at the early stage, that we're probably in the same phase of for blockchain as we were for the .com phase. We're probably in the 92 to 95 range, where there's some interesting applications coming up, and we're seeing a vision how it can work. And so we're growing that business quite a bit. And so you get into the tools and the infrastructure tools that people are going to use to build their business. The high end point applications that are really the sexy ones that people want are probably not going to work for a while. I remember in 2019, and Andreessen Horowitz talked about today here in 2019, everything we tried to do in 1997 to 99, we can now do it. So basically, all the things you were trying to do 20 years in advance, and most of them didn't work because the infrastructure wasn't there. It took 20 years to build out the infrastructure, and blockchain will be no different. It will take a decade or more to build out the infrastructure. So go for the simple things. I always remind people, do you remember what the go-to-market strategy was for Amazon? What was their tagline when they went to market? Do you remember what that was?
I don't remember what it was, but it was all about books, right?
That's right. We sell books online. And one of the challenges I see with startups is they have a vision of what they want. The problem is they want it on day one. And I tell them, even the company I used to work for, they had a great vision for it. And when I started in 1986, they were just putting it out there. And I can honestly say they got to the full vision 32 years later. And so it takes a long time to fully put that vision into place. And those who want it on day one are going to be disappointed. You have to start small. You have to start with things that generate cash and revenue. And so what you do on day one is going to lead to the vision, but it won't be the vision. It takes time to get to the vision as well. And so blockchain is the same way. It's at early days. There's a lot of great vision being sold, but you're going to be looking for things that can actually transact in the current market where the technology is nascent and people are still coming up and the regulatory isn't approved and there's just a lot of hurdles that go with that. So you're looking for things that are working in this economy, not in the final vision.
But it sounds like that you're pretty bullish or excited about the blockchain, like and keeping your thumb on it and to see like what's going to happen.
I think so. I think the technology is really enabling. I think it really is that. And that's I think the right perspective. After the dot-com bust, most people came back and said, well, the internet is not a business, it's an enabling technology. And you have to put it back into perspective that just because you have internet doesn't mean you have a successful business. You have the components that may or may not be a successful business. And the same thing was true with blockchain in 2017. I had people doing pure blockchain systems. The UI was done on blockchain and everything was done on blockchain. And that made no sense to me. I thought blockchain is for the core enabling technology, and then around it, you put tools that are better for the UI or the database or other aspects of it that don't have to be in blockchain, and you'll end up with a better system. And so it's an enabling technology, and you have to start thinking about how it can be used effectively because its performance is very slow in some cases. You're trading off security for speed, and for some aspects that's a good decision. For other aspects, it's not. So we have to use it very carefully.
And what about you? What's your kind of 5 years from now? Like, what do you see that what you'll be doing? What's happening? What's your kind of future outlook?
So I think the world's going to move to crowdfunding and blockchain-based tools. The traditional angel VC world will look very different. I think it will still be there. It will be a smaller piece of a bigger uh, window of fundraising and so forth. So we're looking to just be a part of all those new technologies and platforms. The principle of fundraising doesn't really change. You still have to meet the investor. You still have to convince them you have the right solution, but the technologies and formats are changing. Angel groups used to be dinner club models. We'd all go down to a local dinner club and meet and do in-person pitches. And then COVID comes along and moves all of them online into Zoom calls. You find out that you can do that a lot faster and cheaper than you did before. So when we come back from COVID into the next stage, nobody wants to go back to physical meetings purely. They want to use hybrid models, and so we see that going forward. That first meetings now across the board for most angels and VCs are online. We're not going to meet in the coffee shop or in the room. We're going to meet online, and so that kind of speeding up the process. It will continue, and more things go in a way that we can sort through and figure out which deals are going to get interest from funding and make that a better process. And then blockchain brings a lot of new elements to it as well, with security token offerings. And so instead of just getting equity, now you're getting a token that gives you other utilities. I get access, I get the right to buy something, I get more than just ownership. And that's an interesting nuance to see how that comes into it. And the last one is impact investing. I think there's a move towards businesses need to have some impact and can't be just there to make money. It has to be doing some good. And I see every year a greater percent of businesses that are impact businesses as we move into climate change and other areas. That's a key thing as well.
Actually, a quick question on the token stuff. Do you think some of the regulatory rules of investing will not be have to happen with the blockchain investing, like doing these tokens and coins and such?
I think the right now the regulatory is pretty heavy on it because we've got 1900s regulatory on a 2000 technology base, and so it's very limiting and it doesn't fit. And over time, they'll update that. They will come in with the regulatory tools, and they'll be able to parse out what is really equity ownership or securities and what is not. And it's just still very early days to see how those tokens are really going to work, how they really influence investors, and how do you protect the investors. There's been a lot of investors really got get scammed in the blockchain world because it's going to be a great thing, then it wasn't. And so we have to start building out better regulatory tools that encompass the blockchain world, managing the tokens. Not everything's a security, but then what safeguards can you put in there that if they say it's X, it's really X, and that's a challenge now.
And then crowdfunding, let's say just a normal person maybe has a decent net worth, but doesn't have to be the big whale investor. How would they get involved in the crowdfunding investing today or maybe in the short future?
Sure. So, to get a good portfolio in the startup world, you need 10 investments. So you take the amount of money that you have, divide by 10, and that's how many deals you have to go into to make it work. And it used to be people brought in $500,000 and they were writing 50K checks to each of 10 different deals. And then in the crowdfunding world, what you see is people coming in with maybe $100,000, and they're going to write 10K checks for each of 10 deals, more to this one, a little bit less to that one, but I got to be in 10 deals. And but then the average investment from a crowdfunder is 500 bucks. And so if you come in with $5,000 and you put 500 on each of 10 different deals, you have a diversified portfolio. If it's a big win, I'm not sure any one of those will really knock it out of the park, but you should have a positive return at that point. So portfolio theory doesn't change. It just is applied to a different one. So in the 90s, when I went to that first angel group, they were literally raising $5 million to start a web business, each one of them. And people don't believe me when I say that, but realize back then you had to build your own server farm. You had to pay American wages for everything. You didn't rent anything. There was no AWS. You had to go build that yourself. So it was expensive to build web businesses. Well, today the cost of building has gone down so much that you can actually put in $500 and have a meaningful investment into something because it doesn't take that much to get something up and running. There's so many tools that make it lower cost. The cost has come down dramatically since then, but still, there's now many more businesses to go and invest in.
Let's take it back. Look at your high school self, your 16-year-old self. Like, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
The success I've seen come up is when you get in on the next generation technologies. You look at the new things. When I worked at the big company there for a while, the PC was coming up. The IBM PC was really becoming the thing. But in the early days, it was tough sledding. I mean, gosh, we had 512 memory, not even K, but 512. And then we got 512K memory, and we were able to do more. And then we worked our way up. But many a blue screen of death, many a crash, and many a challenge that came with that very early stage technology. So you have to take the arrows in the back, so to speak, with the technology. But if you get in early on the next generation, that's where the big money was going because everybody was buying that, everybody was going to it. So I was a big believer in getting on the leading edge of the technology. And some people once commented, well, you want to be on the leading edge, but not the bleeding edge, because you got to do things that the technology can do. But every year they came out with a new version of the PC, we were able to do another layer of applications. We had more processing power, we had more memory, we had more tools. The software just used it up as fast as it was available. And so the same thing will be true on blockchain and these other things is, you're going to have to go in and realize what can be done with the technology today. And the people that roadmap that out and kind of predicted when things would be able to be done based on memory or processing power or bit rates or whatever, they're the ones that think had a better vision of it. So that was my advice to my early self is understand the role of early stage technology and how it's going to roll out and get involved in it early, but get involved in places where it can work. And then as it can work on more things, you have more choices to make as to where you want to pursue or go. In the early days, it was very simple stuff, but over time, the PC came up and is now doing very, very sophisticated things, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I remember my first computer that we had at the house was 33 megahertz processor. And then we upgraded to the 46, 66 megahertz processor, which was very exciting. A long ways away. Now your phone is like unreal. I do photography and have a photo video business as well. And now I can download full raw files to the phone, edit them perfectly. I mean, it's pretty amazing the curve it's been on. What's a normal day in the life of you? Like, do you have any rituals, anything that happens, anything that's interesting that is common? Because I think a lot of people look at the investment venture capital world and it's just kind of this black box they don't have no idea about, right?
Yeah, no, it's a process of recruiting and maintaining investor relationships, and then it's recruiting and sorting through startups that want to raise funding. And so every day we're working on those processes that we're going through and meeting those people and working with them. And we do 15 events a month, so we're getting ready for an event almost every day of the month, and we're actually helping provide more content. So I write an espresso every day. I do one a day. Been doing that for a
Oh,
couple of
wow.
years now. So over time, it adds up. So there's content creation is every day, meeting investors is every day, and working with startups is every day. And then we're always improving our business process as well. How do we make things better for the client? How do we make the system more robust and functional and easier to use? So every day we're working on our business, trying to make it. We believe in continual learning, continual innovation. We're always trying to make it better. And most days it's small changes, but over time they end up being substantial platforms that you can build if you stay with it.
Let's talk about that content creation every single day. So what's your process? How do you do it? Do you wake up and do it right away? Do you have a set time? How does that work?
Yeah, it's when I wake up and I run 3 miles and come back, have breakfast, and first thing up is we record the espresso from yesterday that we wrote. And then we've got a list of espressos that we're going to be writing. Part of our process is every day is we're looking for new espresso topics and planning them out. And so we put them in a spreadsheet. So when you sit down, it's there ready to go. And so once we record it, put it on the system and the team takes it from there to productize it, put the music on it and all that. I work on the next espresso and I've got them all lined out by topics to go through about 20 espressos on a topic because that's what usually fits into an e-guide. If I take 5 of them, I can make a short article. If I take 10 of them, I can make a long article. If I take 20 of them, it's an e-guide basically. And so that was the goal, is to come up with the structure so that it's very flexible for whatever we need. We can go build out of it and then reuse it too. We can rebuild into different ways or formats if we have a requirement for that. And then so I just write the next espresso and proof it, and then it's ready for the next day then. And I look for a little bit of my time I spent looking for content. What are people talking about out there? What's a great idea? And creating a list of topics and examples of what people are saying, and trying to figure out what might be a good espresso topic for the future. I have about 6 months worth of espressos to record at any one time out in front of me. At some point, we're going to have to stop, but we haven't seen the end just yet. My original goal was to record all the basics: how to pitch, how to invest, and so forth. And we did that. And now we're doing, I think, second order things: how to write an email, how to sell your business, and so forth. And so we're continuing to find really good topics to write about that we keep building up. But on our website, 10capital.group, we have an education page, which has I think we're up to about 15 e-guides so far. But I'm working on e-guide 40 today. So eventually you'll see more up there. It just takes time to go through the process. Like I say, we're not in a rush. We're just every day working on it a little bit. So it's not a huge cost, but and there's time to go market it when they come out. So we get a new e-guide every month is the goal.
I mean, I think you can take that to almost any business, what you just talked about with content creation, right? Create a list and just keep them going. And I think the big piece there is just continually doing it, keep pushing it out, keep seeing it happening. And then You're doing e-guides, you could do books, you could do a million things because now you can scrunch them together. You can put them in categories. You could, I mean, there's so much places you can take it. That's fantastic. I'm gonna steal some of that stuff for sure. What about any regrets along the way with with your career or life or anything?
There's always mistakes you make. You wish you had done things differently, but nothing major. I think I'd still do everything I did as I did before. I'd go work for the big company. I'd leave the big company and start the entrepreneurship program that I had. I really enjoyed building the Austin entrepreneur ecosystem. I wrote many articles for the local journal and spent time in many a coffee in the coffee shop with the startup, hearing their pitch and so forth. I've had people come back and they said they met me 12 years ago and give me an update on their deal. I'm sometimes wondering who is this guy and what why is he talking to me, but when they mention that, usually it comes back to me. Oh yeah, I remember meeting now because there's been a lot of them. But the idea is it's great to see the entrepreneur ecosystem grow and develop over time. Entrepreneur ecosystems are 10-year commitments; they're not anything less, and so you have to think about that when you go into it. But the gains are extraordinary. What comes out of it? See the community grow and develop and go to the next level. It's certainly worth the effort there as well. So yeah, don't regret anything. Appreciate working with everybody in growing these ecosystems because it's what I find most interesting as well.
What's your favorite coffee shop to go to?
Back in the day, it was called Uno's. It's still there, and then there for a long time, it was the Trianon. It was a local coffee shop. It moved to another location, and then when COVID came along, the coffee shop became a Zoom call. So I got an espresso machine, and I have Nespresso online with the Zoom call, and saves time. Don't have to drive anywhere and so forth. Have done many Starbucks along the way as well, but those are the main ones that we have.
What about like favorite memory or favorite investment, favorite startup, wherever you want to take it? That's just kind of a cool story that you have with all these different investments that you've done.
Had a lot of good investments. Had some that went south on me as well. I think my favorite one was when I ran the SKU acceleration program. We had a group come in that was doing an energy bar called Thunderbird, and it was a really good idea. It was all natural. That was when things were really starting to move in that direction and so forth. And I remember looking at their deck. They put their financial slide up there, and I literally would count it over, and I said, okay, on row 32, column 46. Is that number correct? And the guy's up there busy counting over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the other mentor said, "Stop counting. There's no way anybody can read any of those numbers. They're point 0.2 font, whatever." So remember that. And that group went on to sell their business for a very sizable gain to a corporate strategic. And it was just kind of interesting how even if they're not the best presenters early on, they can still be a really great company. And and everybody's learning in the early days. We had a lot of fun with those companies, helping them get their pitch together, get out and meet people, and grow their business. But I remember that one because they had this wall of a spreadsheet up there. And are we really supposed to be able to read that? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
most people don't realize how impractical that is.
Oh, I've been in many meetings where you're like looking, it's like, oh, cross-eyed, I still can't see what's going on here. I guess I gotta just take your word for whatever you're saying, right? That's so much fun. Um, has there been anything that I've kind of haven't covered with, that you'd like to chat about? Sometimes we go through these things and there's some really interesting piece or anything that you'd like to chat about.
Like I say, we're focused on crowdfunding as kind of a next stage. We think we see a lot of opportunity there. One challenge angel groups have is I was talking to somebody about that this morning is that the process most angel groups have is greatly slanted toward the investor, making their time efficient and processing and so forth. But it doesn't always help the startup, and so I worry a little bit about the dinner club model. Is that process is going to continue because if it's too slanted to one side, you lose the other side, and then you're not able to make transactions anymore, not good ones anyway. And so I'm just wondering where that goes over time. How much can you move online? How much can you make this a good thing for the startup to go through the angel process? And see a lot of people move to crowdfunding because it's much more transactional. I can just put it up on a portal and go out and start talking to anybody, not just a select, not just 5% of the population. I can talk to 100% of the population. So it's a different game there. And so I think crowdfunding is really going to come up big because it's much more equitable to both sides of it than the old angel group was, for sure.
And do you see your side of it to like create this portal to help the startups? Like, where do you see your involvement into the crowdfunding process?
Even if you have it on a portal, the startup still has to go find investors to drive traffic to it. So we get calls every day from people saying I'm up on the portal, and what's working is I put my network in and that worked, and the portal put their network in and that worked, and we're done. Now what? Okay, well, we're looking for another network to go to. We're looking for another group to help us, and so there's always another startup looking for another network that we can be a part of. And so that's the part we do is we try to drive traffic to these websites and help them. And you have more tools now instead of just a list of accredited investors. You have also social media and other tools like that to go out to. And we're seeing more platforms, more social media platforms get engaged with this as well. So I think down the road it's going to be an even bigger thing than the angel thing because it involves so many more people.
And this is my last question. I end every podcast with this question: is how would you like to be remembered?
Well, the way people come back to me now is they said, "Oh, thank you for helping me on my business back in the day. I realize now I wasn't ready, or I realize now the pitch wasn't right, or I realize now the business wasn't going to work. But back then, I really thought it was. But I appreciate the feedback and the help you gave us on that and coaching. So that someone that helped him is, I guess, the way I'd like to be remembered."
That's perfect. Well, Hall, thank you so much for being on the Establishing Your Empire podcast. It was a real pleasure.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.